Let's talk about AEW Dynamite. It's been forever. May the 10th, 2023. This episode 3 commentaries was snake bit from the beginning. I personally attended AEW Dynamite May the 10th, 2023 here in Detroit at Little Caesars Arena. And I attended with my boy Big Certs, who is a contributor to the channel, let's say. And it was okay. I think that some things are better on TV and some things are better in person. The way that they mic'd the building in AEW made everything very difficult to hear. A lot of the announcements, I could barely hear them. A lot of the promos, I could barely hear them. We'll talk about this as I go forward, what was more difficult. So I did need to watch the broadcast all over again. So if you know, I got home at 11 o'clock. I had to go to work the next day. So I watched AEW Dynamite in bits and pieces throughout the day. And so now I have finally was prepared to do the review, and my notes was missing. My notes went missing. I apparently lost them in a binder or something. So they're gone. So I'm going to need some help to remember what actually occurred on this show. Therefore, I'm going to enlist Fightful in assisting me. So I'm not going to actually read their results or anything like that. I need a reminder of what actually occurred on the show in order to give a good review. Because I watched the show, but I watched the show in bits and pieces, and then I took notes, and then the notes are gone. Then I watched the show, but the audio was terrible in the building, so there was a lot of stuff that went missing. So we're going to do the best we can here, okay? We're still going to have fun, I promise. All right, so we start the show with 2 bonus matches that AEW decided to put on. Nyla Rose and Marina Shafir versus Sky Blue and Willow Nightingale. Now, your boy Big Certs, he's a wrestling fan. He's not really necessarily an AEW fan. He had no idea who Nyla Rose was, and then was absolutely upset when I told him who Nyla Rose is. But Willow Nightingale, I'm telling you, Willow Nightingale, humana. If he could have put her in a shopping cart, paid, and took her home, he would have. Okay, he really liked Willow Nightingale. I heard people behind me talking about Marina Shafir, and they said 2 white guys talking to each other. He's like, "Bro, is she wearing pink socks, bro?" And dude was like, "No, man, she's barefoot." Barefoot? Bro, why is she barefoot? That ring's nasty. I'm like, well, she's the first person to step on the fucking ring. At this point, she's the first person to step on the ring. So, I mean, plus she's supposed to be doing this whole MMA thing. I don't know. I didn't care who won. I don't even remember who won. It doesn't matter. The next match was QT Marshall, which made me just jump off the mezzanine. I just wanted to leap off but there was a bunch of children and stuff down beneath me eating pizza, and they was having fun. So I was like, you know what? Maybe now is not the time to ruin their childhood by just having random black dudes just jump off the mezzanine because he has to deal with QT Marshall. Instead, QT Marshall and Aaron Solo, who I can't, oh my God. Aaron Solo, I know nothing about this guy other than the fact that he had Auntie Pam under his wing, and then he managed to fumble that bag. All of that bag that he had, he just managed to let it slip through his fingers. Up, Butterfingers, up, where did it go? She's gone. And now he's stuck with, I don't know, spraying his throat with stuff. I don't know what the fuck that guy was doing. And to be quite honest, I was like, yo, if we should burn the ring after these people get done with it. Just burn the fucking ring after QT Marshall and all these guys get done with it. It sucks. Also, when it comes to QT Marshall, for the record, let's talk about this QT Marshall thing, because he got like a massive reaction in the building. Tons of boos, just booze raining down from the ceiling, just boo. And I looked around, I'm hearing all these boos, and I'm looking around, I ain't seeing nobody looking at this guy. And I'm thinking, like, are they booing and staring at their phone like, boo? Or are these piped in boos? And I was like, this is the only time I ever had to ask that question when it comes to AEW. And I'm thinking, methinks these were piped in boos. At least I think so. But doesn't matter either way. Their opponents was Preston Vance and All Ego Ethan Page. Ethan Page, who is a heel, Preston Vance, who last I checked was also a heel. They were the opponents, and they were playing the babyface for this evening because Preston Vance is from Detroit, and Ethan Page is from Canada. And I guess if you're from Canada, you're a babyface in Detroit. Not necessarily my understanding of geography, but, you know, Tony Khan has his own way of doing things. Don't care who won this match either, even though I'm pretty sure it was Preston Vance and All Ego Ethan Page. I'm pretty sure Babyfaces won both of those matches, and everybody was supposed to be happy. At one point, Tony Khan came out there to talk about how great Detroit was and prepare us for Dynamite and all this kind of stuff. He still was not blinking. He did not blink. He refused to blink. He just, no blinking. Blink did not occur. Blink didn't occur till the third time I saw Tony Khan that evening. I saw him 3 times that night. He didn't blink during the first 2 times, and the second time he only blinked because he closed his eyes first. So I guess he just, you know, he closed his eyes, and then when he opened, he was like, oh, that felt good, and did it again. That might have been the only time I ever seen the guy blink. He blinked 1 time. In the 3 hours that I saw, I sat there, I saw Tony Khan blink 1 time. Once. Whatever he was on, it was the good stuff. All right, so during the shitty B-show, pre-show, whatever they were doing, I decided, both me and Serts, we decided to check out. We left. He went to go get a Long Island iced tea, which he nursed for the rest of the evening. I went and got a big lemonade and a big pretzel. I'm thinking, okay, this pretzel is going to be like Auntie Annie's pretzels. You know, they're big, they're soft, they're buttery, absolutely delicious. You know, just the right amount of salt, not to give you a headache. I'm thinking, oh baby, this is about to be the one, okay? And then I get back to my seats. I'm trying my best to ignore QT Marshall and all the shit that they doing in this ring. I bite that damn pretzel, and I swear to Jesus, I thought my jaw was going to melt. It was so salty. I was angry. I spent the next maybe 5 or 6 minutes literally scrubbing the salt off that pretzel. It was like he was trying to clean a cast iron pan, just scrubbing it, just like get all of the salt off of it. As much salt off of that shit as I could. I still walked out of there with a headache. And I'm pretty sure that didn't do any favors for my enjoyment of AEW Dynamite. I'm pretty sure that did me no fucking favors. It kicked my ass. That pretzel beat the shit out of me. All right, I couldn't deal with it no more. I'm too old to have so much salt. That's why damn it, I wanted that pretzel bad too. And I was like, you know, I couldn't throw it away. So I just scrubbed the salt off. Scrubbing the salt off actually works. It's still some that remains, but it's lightly salted after that point. All right, so the show starts. Phoenix and Claudio, they do the entrances. They actually did the entrances before Dynamite started. I'm pretty sure if you guys saw the show, you know, they were already in the ring when the show started. Phoenix got a pretty good reaction in the building. People were very excited to see him. Same thing with Claudio. People were very excited to see these guys. It didn't get like the biggest reactions of the night, but they got pretty good reactions for the show. People were very into it. And the match itself, to me, was very good. Phoenix has some problems in the ring. I'm talking big problems in the ring. In so much as, despite that his stuff looks good, and, you know, you could tell he's like inspired by true lucha libre, he still misses things. Like, he did a jump kick, and I could see that he missed that a mile away, and Claudio still took a bump. He still sold it. I didn't understand that. Claudio, of course, has some absolutely brilliant strength spots. I didn't watch the screens. I actually watched him pick him up and throw him over the barricade into the crowd. I thought that was pretty dope. Unfortunately, it seemed like he was outside the ring forever, because typically that's how AEW works, is that the rules are just a suggestion. You just kind of follow the rules, I guess. but the match was fun. Legitimately one of the more fun matches. I didn't understand the double jeopardy concept because I had not been following Ring of Honor. I did not watch Rampage or whatever they used to set this up. When Justin Roberts was talking about it over the PA or the house mic, I couldn't hear what he was saying. It wasn't because people were yelling and screaming. It was just the audio quality was terrible. And I could tell it was the audio quality because I went to Raw in that same building several months ago, and the audio was fine. I could hear every single thing people were saying. I couldn't hear shit in AEW. So it's obviously just the quality of the audio in that build of the AEW. So I watched the show, and in watching the show, I learned a lot more about the Double Jeopardy concept that Claudio and Phoenix, the winner, gets the challenge for the other one's title. Now, my dumbass thought it was a Ring of Honor world title match. That's what I thought. Okay, but I clearly was wrong. So Claudio and a partner of his choosing will get to wrestle Phoenix and Penta for the Ring of Honor Tag Team Championships. Now, I don't like this idea, and this is why I don't like this idea. I don't like the idea because, just to me, what is the point of Ring of Honor if all of the big matches are going to take place either on Dynamite or on AEW pay-per-views or whatever? Now, if you're going to say, well, this match, but, this match wasn't a title match, they're going to have the actual title match on the Ring of Honor show. True, and that would be touche on my part. The problem is, you had this match on Dynamite, meaning, unless I care about the Ring of Honor tag team titles, which I don't, why did you have this match in front of us? Why not have this match on Ring of Honor to get people who are interested in Ring of Honor to watch Ring of Honor, or get people who might be interested in just this match to watch Ring of Honor? By giving us this match on Dynamite, it basically becomes, I would say, a good chunk of the audience gives a shit. A good chunk of the audience just like, yay, good match. They don't really care about the storyline attachment to it, because why should they? And then during the commentary on TV, they're talking about Phoenix and Penta being connected with the Young Bucks and how Claudio and the Blackpool Combat Boys are trying to beat up people connected to the Young Bucks. And I'm like, what is their connection? They had matches against them. That was it. They're not friends. They don't go hang out and have tequila together, do they? I don't know. I haven't seen that. That hasn't been shown to me. But, I'm asking for too much when it comes to AEW. All right, so at this point, we're doing good. AEW just giving us a pretty solid match. Phoenix and Claudio had about 15 minutes. Very solid match. Fun. We got up on the big screen. I see a pair of skinny ankles. I'm like, okay, what's going on here? It expands up. It's Miro. Huge reaction in the building for Miro. People are chanting, Miro, 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 Miro. I'm like, okay, we actually going to get something here. This is going to be fun, right? I'm thinking something fun's going to happen. Nothing fun happens. Thunder Rosa comes out a little bit later, and she got a very mild reaction. It's almost as if people forgot who she was, and that in some version of the universe, she doesn't exist. Okay. Very mild reaction for Thunder Rosa. Very embarrassing too. Both of them go into Tony Khan's office. And later, Tony Khan, for the second time I saw him this evening, he cuts a promo where he's talking about great amounts of talent. And he's talking about he thinks that they can deliver more content, which of course feeds into the rumors. Now let's talk about the rumors. And I know 13 minutes into the video, why you want to talk about the rumors now? Because why not? Damn it. This is hard. Okay. I'm doing this with no paper, no pen, nothing. I'm going right off the top of my dome. Okay. So the rumors of the $1 billion that everybody's been talking about. Okay. I tried to trace down the beginning of this scenario. What I see is that it started on the Wrestling Observer newsletter, not Facebook page, but the board. All right. It started there. And I said, okay, I can completely dismiss this now because it was started by some no-name guy on Dave Meltzer's board. But then all the wrestling media outlets start to pick it up. they start chatterboxing about it. Some people start talking about how it might make sense. You got the WrestleNomics guys. It makes a little bit of sense if you do this math and you add the 1 and you carry the 2. It might make sense. I'm like, oh, what the fuck are you talking about? Let's break it down. Simpler terms, easier to understand. The deal, as people are talking about it, again, it's just a rumor, is that Warner Brothers Discovery is going to pay AEW $200 million a year for 5 years. This would include exclusive rights to AEW wrestling, which would be Dynamite, Rampage, New Show, Collision, whatever you want to call it, in addition to the pay-per-views being on the streaming service. And they think that this is going to be worth $1 billion. That is the belief. And people are basically speculating that this is the new deal that AEW is going to announce next week at the Warner Brothers upfronts. Now, I said to this $200 million sounds like a lot. Now, it is absolutely true that Warner Brothers Discovery has been in cost-cutting mode. Them turning around and giving $1 billion to AEW seems like a stretch to me. It just seems like a lot. All right. I don't know how much they make now. I think it's in the 40-50 range. You're talking about them getting a 4 times increase from a company that's cutting costs. I don't know about that one, dog. That one just seemed like a push for me. All right. That seems like a stretch. If you'd have told me that they were going to sign this deal, sign over their pay-per-views and all this kind of stuff, what would be a reasonable expectation on the return of this money? Again, we can't just look at TV ratings. We have to look at pretty much everything. So in sitting down talking about such a huge deal, I said to myself, what would be necessary to justify this huge deal? One would be a substantial amount of money in ad revenue that Warner Brothers Discovery would expect AEW to be able to sell or buy. They would generate, let's put it, that's a better word. They would be able to generate X amount of dollars in ad revenue for their show. And I say, okay, I don't know what that, I don't understand the nuts and bolts of marketing and what these things are all about. I can just say, I'm looking at Dynamite and there's something that jumps out at me that I don't think anybody's ever mentioned before. They don't do outside ads. When was the last time, let's say, Excalibur did an outside ad? And by what I mean by outside ad, like Skittles or Hershey's or Faygo Red Pop or anything. Every time they do commercials within the body of AEW, it's always for other AEW products, right? All Access, the pay-per-views, Rampage, Dynamite. That's it. They don't do ad reads for anything else. So I'm thinking to myself, they clearly must have an issue with sponsorships. They clearly must have issues with ad revenue because they don't do any outside ads. Even when Dynamite started, at least they did outside ads. Like they would have Cracker Barrel and all this kind of stuff. And you would be like, okay, that would be the sponsor for the show. They might even do an ad read here and there. But now there's no ad reads. And there's no... It's like when you used to buy comic books, you used to see ads in the comic book. And then over time, you stop seeing ads for outside companies and only ads to other comic books. Marvel, you're holding a Spider-Man comic in your hand. And the only other commercials in the book is for like Daredevil, Moon Knight, X-Men. You're like, okay, that's great. But who's subsidizing this industry? Like when comic books used to make money, it was because they used to have ad revenue. They used to be able to, people would buy ads in the comic books. Video game companies, movie companies, et cetera, et cetera. Why don't you see that with AEW? So I started rubbing my chin at that point. I was like, okay, so Warner Brothers Discovery is going to pay $200 million for this company, or to this company, and there's no outside ad revenues. There's no outside, outside ad reads. So I'm thinking to myself, what is this worth really? Now people have been saying to me, Mongo, come on. They are regularly number one in TV ratings on Wednesday nights or in there in the top 5 or 10 or whatever. And I say, okay, that part, true. That's true. That's verifiable. We can verify that. The problem is that's not really how TV shows are ranked, like to the network. Each TV show is essentially its own business. Okay. Meaning that you have to generate the cost of your television product back. They don't care if you beat everything else on TV. If you're too expensive and you don't make your money back, then it doesn't matter. Okay. It does not matter how good your ratings are unless you start to make that money back, or they think that they can make that money back, or you brought a certain audience that allows them to help them make that money back. So without that information, don't know how well AEW is doing on that front. Okay. But we can say, again, looking, no outside sponsors, no outside ad reads. I'm rubbing my chin. I'm thinking to myself, how is Warner Brothers Discovery going to make money off this thing? You know, where's their money going to come from? So then I'll wade over into the conspiracy theory, you know, just because I want to get both extremes. I want to get the crazy AEW fans. I want to know what they think. And they think Tony Khan's Jesus and that he's resurrecting wrestling and all this kind of stuff. But then I wade over here in the swamp and I see some people say, you want to know what the real story is? I'm like, yes, I do, sir. And they say to me, I think Tony Khan is paying Warner Brothers to be on TV. And I looked at that and I said, bruh, that's awful business. Okay. Like that's terrible business. How true could that be? Would it be true that Warner Brothers Discovery would, instead of paying AEW, that AEW would pay them to be on their network? And I said, that's nutty enough to be somewhat of the case, but I don't think so. I think Tony Khan has a strong enough business where he doesn't need to pay to be on television. Okay. I don't think AEW is that bad off. All right. I may be, critical of AEW, but I don't want it to die. And I don't think Tony Khan's an absolute shit for brains moron. I don't think he knows that much about wrestling. I don't think that he's resurrecting the business with his golden touch. I don't believe that. But do I believe that he's basically funding all of this shit? That he's paying these exorbitant wrestling costs? He's paying all these exorbitant building costs? And then he's turning around and buying all of the tickets? Because I saw that too, that he's buying all these tickets at Wembley. And now he's paying the television network to be on the air. It's like, that's too far. All right. You're going too far. Especially when there's better explanations for what's going on. Like, people have been like, how can he sell 70,000 tickets at Wembley and he can't sell 8,000 tickets in Detroit? I'm like, okay, that's a good point. But take into account first time in Wembley, take into account scalpers, take things into account before we jump to the conclusion that he's buying all the tickets himself because he's got money to blow. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, let's just chill on that. So let's chill on the idea that he's paying Warner Brothers to be on the air. Let's chill on that. Okay. let's cool it with that one. Let's just say that I think that he's willing to make a deal that's not going to be disclosed because it's likely, unless it's massive, he will disclose. If it's massive and it makes AEW look like it's in the same league with WWE, he will announce the numbers. If it's just a modest increase, which is still good, and it gets them a new show, which is still good, they'll probably just say, Warner Brothers Discovery is our great partners and they want more AEW content, yada, 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 and we will provide them that. Now, why would I think it would make sense to create a new AEW show? Because some people barely watch Dynamite. Because when you look at the overall scope of Hollywood right now, you got the writers on strike right now as we speak. Scripted television, which is already very expensive. It's very expensive to make scripted television. Last time the writers went on strike, there was an increase in reality TV shows. Okay. Warner Brothers Discovery, one of the things that they talked about, I believe we talked about that on the channel before, is they were trying to limit the amount of scripted television Because again, Warner Brothers, one of their biggest properties was Food Network. And they don't do scripted television. Food Network is food shows, you know. Now, if you want to say that a food show is scripted, I mean, by all means. But diners, drive-ins, and dives and stuff like that, okay? Wrestling is not scripted. Now, it's scripted in a certain way, but they don't have union writers and all that kind of stuff, okay? If I could see it where Warner Brothers says, you know what is relatively cheap content that people will actually watch, that we can make some money on, maybe not a hell of a lot, but we can make some money on it. And it has a dedicated fan base that will come out and see it, and it looks good, and we know this guy, and everything works out. He's been a partner with us before. Maybe we give him a little extra cheddar. Maybe we make some deals for the pay-per-views or whatever. And we can actually fill some content on this network without having to go through writers going on strike and all that kind of shit. That makes sense to me. How much is that worth? I won't even speculate. All right. Because I don't know how much they make now. I think it's in the 40, 50 million range. I would expect it to go up maybe the 80, 90 million range. And if they want to start, having the pay-per-views on HBO Max or whatever, maybe it might reach the 100 million range. At that point, that opens up a whole different kettle of fish, though. And what I mean by that is they don't do enough pay-per-views. They only do like 4 or 5 pay-per-views a year. Okay. If you're going to make, let's say, $1 billion and you're going to be the centerpiece of HBO Max or whatever they're calling it now, I'm pretty sure there will be pressure up top for you to create more pay-per-views. All right. I'm almost certain, because HBO Max is a behemoth that is on their books that's consistently losing money, just like Disney Plus and Netflix and Hulu and everything else, right? So they're going to want as many eyeballs on that shit as often as possible. So you running a pay-per-view every 4 months doesn't really do them any good. Running a pay-per-view every 3 months doesn't really do them any good. You may have to adopt a WWE schedule where you do a pay-per-view every month. That would explain why they're having All In and All Out very close together. Because if you're going to be on HBO Max, okay, I think they're in the same month, actually. All right. Now, I'm not saying they're going to expand for, 24 shows and all that kind of stuff. But I'm saying is if you're being paid for content, it behooves you to make more content. I mean, that's what's getting you paid, right? It's the iron law of incentives. It's common fucking sense. Okay. So you're not going to say, we're only going to make 4 pay-per-views a year, no matter what you pay us. If they say we'll pay you more to create more content, you're going to create more content. So I can see this being a pretty decent business venture for AEW and Warner Brothers. And as two entities, they may need each other. Warner Brothers gives AEW some level of credibility. It's a legitimate network. It's a legitimate company. People know TBS. They know TNT. They have wrestling history. The audience likes it there. I see things working out just fucking fine. Okay. Now, when you talk about the new show, and you're especially talking about TV ratings, now the new show, which we're all assuming is going to be Collision on Saturdays, that's all speculation. You're going to talk about a show that's going to get decimated several times a year. So you can't talk about, the TV ratings, my TV ratings. Look, this show is going to be going head to head with some of the biggest boxing events, WWE events, UFC events, college football, college basketball, baseball games, basketball games, hockey games. Weekend is big for sports. And having a regular show on the weekend, that show's going to get brutalized pretty much every fucking week. So I'm sitting here scratching my forehead like, I don't care about CM Punk being on that show. Who the fuck cares? That show is going to get decimated by college football every fucking week. Once they start having NFL games on Saturdays, it's going to get decimated every week. NBA games, decimated every week. Hockey, baseball, there's always some kind of sport playing. And then you have the big fights, big UFC fight, big boxing event. It's going to crush that show. So why would you set them up for failure by putting them on a Saturday night? My guess is it probably won't be Saturday night. Maybe they'll move it to Thursday. And yes, TNA Impact runs on Thursday, but do you think Tony Khan gives a fuck about them? No. So my best bet is it going to be a Saturday night show or a Sunday night show? It certainly shouldn't be Sunday. That absolutely shouldn't be the case, especially during football season. I would say they should probably have a Thursday night show, a Wednesday and Thursday show. And I think that the House Rules events are a way of playing to see what nights work for AEW. You know, not just that they're running small buildings, but what nights can they get people out of their homes and into a building for an event? A weekend is really good. But when you're talking about, again, in competition with everything else that's running, it's just something else to look at. So I'm asking myself, as I talk about this Warner Brothers deal, what is this worth to them? You know, and this is where people start, that little conspiracy theorist in the back of my mind keeps saying, because Tony's paying for it, so it don't matter. And I'm saying to myself, no, it's not. This can't be. How will we ever know anyway? I'm going to say, I expect AEW to have an increase in business. You know, I mean, expand their business by expanding their partnership with Warner Brothers Discovery. But until I start seeing Excalibur do outside ad reads or, stuff for like Pizza Hut and Pepsi and Coca-Cola and all that kind of stuff, not just commercials. I'm talking like in arena ad reads, like Michael Cole does. Until that stuff starts to happen, I'm really questioning how much money AEW is really generating for Warner Brothers and even for themselves. So do I expect it to be $1 billion? Fuck no. Do I expect it to be $100 million? Maybe, $500 million? Maybe. I think that's far more realistic. Do I think they'll shutter their pay-per-view business and go to the streaming service? It behooves Warner Brothers to try to get them to do that. Does it really help AEW? I don't know. I think Fight would know because Fight would get affected. If they're going to pull their pay-per-views, Fight would probably be like, what the fuck, especially if they're going to move them to like Bleacher Report or something like that. But then what about that? Because if HBO Max and Bleacher Report are in competition, who wins? Both are owned by Warner. So you either get HBO Max and watch the pay-per-view, or you order it on Bleacher Report. I don't know. But these are all just speculation. But do I believe the $1 billion rumor? I don't. Now let's get back into the review. I'm trying to figure out what the hell FTR Bald is talking about because I can't hear nothing. I'm telling you. All I hear is, come on out. And I'm like, what? And so here comes Sanjay Dutt. I feel like the spirits was holding me back. This is the closest I ever been to Sanjay Dutt in my life. And I feel like the spirits of my ancestors was keeping me in that seat. Cause I was like, I choke this motherfucker right now. I leap over all of these rows of people just to punch Sanjay Dutt right in the tip of his fucking nose. Even if I don't break it. I just want to dot him, right? Like, motherfucker. I hate Sanjay Dutt. He fucking sucks. Anyway. The storyline of this scene here is that FTR will only accept Lethal and Jarrett's challenge for the World Tag Team Championships only if they admit that they're trying to use Mark Briscoe to get at them. And I was like, okay. And Sanjay Dutt is, of course, upset about this. No, we're really friends. We're all real friends. And then Mark Briscoe comes out, and Mark Briscoe completely shits all over the previous situation by saying, oh yeah, Tony Khan, man, he already made the match and I'm going to be the special guest referee. And I'm like, okay, sure. Let's go for that. At this point, he's talking about trying to keep the peace. He wants everybody to be friends. So he gives them some tequila, and, I think it was it Sanjay Dutt that took the tequila, he drank it, and then he spit in FTR Bald's face. He also, at this point, everything absolutely breaks down. What follows is one of the worst brawls I've ever seen. Jeff Jarrett is like, he's fumbling around in the dark. He's just he's just grabbing at anybody. And I'm like, okay, he's not blind. What's going on here? They're trying to beat up FTR here and he's resisting, but they're not like beating him up. Mark Briscoe goes to check on Dax and he gets power driven by Dax. And everybody starts chanting, "You fucked up, you fucked up, you fucked up." And Lethal and Jarrett and all them, they flee. They get the hell out of there. FTR is like legitimately upset about Mark Briscoe. They're like, "No, Mark Briscoe, our best good friend. How can we do this to you? Why?" And I'm like, well, all Mark Briscoe has to, well, he was sitting there, right? He was watching. He knows that this is all an accident, but it's still a power driver, which sucks. Like, what kind of person is this? Like, I'm power driving the first thing I see. Power drive. I'm gonna power drive. I got you. I'm gonna power drive you for my daughter. And I'm like, okay, sure. Let's go with that. Let's just power drive the first person we come across, because apparently that's how we do things in the wrestling business. I mean, like, not like Mark Briscoe couldn't resist that. He couldn't resist a blind man's power driver. Shit. Come on, man. Moving on. Chris Jericho is backstage. He's back there talking about his restraining order that he got on Adam Cole. He's in the building. Adam Cole cannot be in the building. And I'm thinking, okay, typical coward heel Chris Jericho. This works. He's confronted by Roderick Strong. Roderick Strong is, talking about how Adam Cole is his friend and who's not banned from the building. Me. So how about me and you have a match next week? Jericho looks at him, yada, yada, yada. They accept the match. And then I see that it's Falls Count Anywhere. I'm like, Falls Count Anywhere? This is the first time these two have ever wrestled, to my knowledge. Now, maybe in some dark corner of wrestling history, Roderick Strong has wrestled Chris Jericho, but I have never seen these two people in the same ring together. I was very interested in them having a match. That looks fun to me. The idea of Roderick Strong versus Chris Jericho, never would have thought about that before. That's a good match. To add the Falls Count Anywhere thing, I was like, what the you ruined it. Like, this is the shits. So then they doubled down on the shits by saying that the Jericho Appreciation Society is also banned from ringside because Roderick Strong also got legal counsel to ban them from ringside. And I was like, how is he so sure Jericho was going to accept? I don't know, man. Look, all of this is just bullshit, okay? This is bullshit. For starters, Roderick Strong being put in a match with Chris Jericho is a lose-lose situation. All right? He's not going to win this match, by the way. So it's just a lose situation. You put him in this match. Yes, the AEW audience knows who he is, but they want to know what you're going to do with him. How are you going to showcase him, right? So you decide to showcase Roderick Strong by putting him in a match with Chris Jericho. Right thing to do. Okay, fine. We could always have Jericho bitch out, walk away, get counted out. Jericho get disqualified. Since we're doing disqualifications, he can always get counted out since we're doing that. The Jericho Appreciation Society can jump him as he's looking like he's going to win. All of this stuff would make Roderick Strong look okay. And since he would be stuck by himself, you could do heelish things like paintbrushing him, kicking him in the head or whatever. But you could put him in the match where he looks like a big deal. You utilize his strength, which is his wrestling. And you can beat, and he could win. He can win in ways that doesn't involve pinfalls or submissions. Now, he can't pin or submit Chris Jericho. Why is that? Well, because Adam Cole has to wrestle Chris Jericho. And in order to keep Chris Jericho's heat, he can't lose to anybody before he loses to Adam Cole. So, he can't win this match. So not only did you put him in a match that's garbage, it's a garbage match, like legitimately, like the definition of a garbage match, there's no rules. But then you put him in a garbage match that he's more than likely going to lose. And more than likely going to lose because Daniel Garcia or somebody else pops up to attack him from behind, hit him with a brick or something like that, and he's going to get pinned outside. So it's going to be, the Jericho Appreciation Society are banned from ringside, but if I take you in the back, if I take you outside, I get it. I like Jericho versus Roderick Strong. I think it's a great idea. I just don't like how they're going to get. I don't like the falls count anywhere. It's not necessary. It's completely not necessary. It's stupid. Next match, Orange Cassidy versus Daniel Garcia. I was checked out at this point. I was like, oh my God, Orange Cassidy. On the other hand, Big Search does like Orange Cassidy. He was kind of interested in this match. He didn't know who Daniel Garcia was. Inside the building, Daniel Garcia got very little reaction until he started doing that little wiggle dance that he does. At that point, he started getting really a pretty good reaction. But most people did not care at all about Daniel Garcia, which is, I guess it's unfortunate. But then again, how could you care? Why would you care? This match was long as hell, but the good thing I will say is Orange Cassidy got a massive reaction in the building. One of the top 5 biggest reactions had probably been number 5 after Miro, and which is, probably got, I wouldn't say he got the number 1 reaction. I think Kenny Omega got the number 1 reaction. But Orange Cassidy was on the list in the building of guys that got pretty fucking good reactions. So there was a vignette about the Outcasts versus Hikaru Shida, Britt Baker, and Jamie Hayter. And since the match is next week, I don't know why they told us that Shida wasn't here. Shida's not here this week. I'm like, okay, did I need to know that? You could have just challenged. It says nobody's here this week because nobody's coming in this building. None of these people, well, I can't say that. Saraya and them was there. They showed up at Rampage, but the rest of these chicks, they wasn't there either. Britt Baker didn't show up. Jamie Hayter didn't show up. So we're stuck with this now. Okay, fine. The six woman tag match is pretty on the nose. We all knew that was coming. Let's move on. Christian Cage, massive reaction. This is the one time throughout the show where I literally sat and it was like I was sitting in a soundproof booth. I didn't hear fuck all nothing except people chanting Edge is better. They hate Christian. I don't think he did anything to Detroit. Outside of feuding with Rhino and TNA, where they had the 8 Mile Road street fight or whatever the fuck it was stupid. Outside of that, he didn't do anything to Detroit, and we just absolutely hate his guts. Now, he did say that Detroit's the worst city in the United States. I guess that didn't help matters, but he didn't really do anything. You think he was a Chicago Bull in the 1990s or something like that, and the way he got booed out of the building. It was crazy. The content of his promo was that his resume means that he's the number 1 contender for the TNT title. And when you have a resume like his, you get to go in there and call your shot, which is, legitimate. Okay. So then he starts talking about Wardlow and about Wardlow needing a father figure. What's up with these guys in AEW and their daddy issues? I was wondering the same thing, but for a different reason. Especially after Jungle Boy, took his pot shots at Billy Gunn. I was like, yeah, this guy's got a daddy issue. Anyway. So he was talking about what is up with these guys with their daddy issues. And he talked about Wardlow's daddy being dead, but he's not going to take any cheap shots at Wardlow's daddy because Wardlow's daddy was not famous and nobody cared about him. Then he said he found a kindred spirit in Arn Anderson, but Arn Anderson was looking for a son, which some people astutely reminded me that Arn Anderson had a son that passed away recently. He died in March. So this is, that's kind of brutal. That was pretty bad. That one hurt. So then he kept going after Arn Anderson, who he says to him is not a real legend, that he was the other guy, meaning the Jannetty in the tag team with Tully, and that he was Ric Flair's lapdog for 30 years. That doesn't make you a legend. And he says, how many world titles have you won, Arn? None. 0. Christian was absolutely on fire. He was on fire. I wish I could hear him in the building. That was the one thing that really kind of doused my flame is I was so upset that I couldn't hear him in the building. But when I watched it on TV, excellent. It was fantastic. So, Christian versus Wardlow, I'm guessing they're going to have the match next week. Maybe they're going to save it for Double or Nothing. But Christian got so much heat. I am so ready for that. And I like Christian. I'm a big fan. And Edge is better than Christian. Everybody knows this. And so I don't know why everybody keeps debating that subject. The next match was No Holds Barred. Anna Jas versus Julia Hart. Now, as far as I could tell, this was a heel versus heel match because the last I checked, Julia Hart was a heel. But I don't know. Like watching it on TV, they talked about how these two had an extensive feud. I feel like this is the first time I've ever seen them wrestle each other. It might be the second. But this match was no holds barred. I had no idea it was going to be no holds barred. Julia Hart, let's talk about how she was dressed. Because she came out there looking like a Maury Show guest. I mean, she was dressed like somebody bought her clothes at Marshall's. And I laughed my ass off and I looked at this. But this match was no good. Okay. Julia Hart's probably only had like 10 matches her entire career. Most of them was barely 2 minutes. Anna Jay she's had longer matches, but she's relatively inexperienced too. And you put them both out there in a situation where they hitting each other with weapons and stuff. And I'm just looking like, come on, bro. This is unbelievable. They did a superplex from the top on a stack of chairs. And I was like, get the fuck out of here. Just hang it up. Okay. Wrap this thing up. Wrap it up, B. And, so Julia Hart wins. This is honestly the first match I've ever seen Julia Hart win. I don't think I've ever seen her win a match before. So, definitely a Julia Hart match. And so there that is. Anna Jay, Jesus, flat ass bad attitude. Backstage, Best Friends and Bandito are mulling over what rule they're going to create for their dealer's choice portion of this trios championship match. I still didn't understand it. Thankfully they put the rules up on the big screen for me to see, and I was like, okay, so I get the challengers get to make one rule. And so they made the one rule, and because they were stupid idiots. They didn't know what the rule to pick. What rule should I pick? What rule should I have? And it turns into no witches at ringside. I was like, my goodness, way to take something that could have been cool and chucking it in the shredder almost immediately, because these stupid fucking guys didn't know they could pick a rule. So it means they agreed to a match without knowing the rules of the match. Then the only rules they could come up with was to keep the 120-pound girl from ringside. I would say my rule, the big one can't wrestle. If I can pick any rule, Brody King has to wrestle with one arm tied behind his back. That's my rule. But this is pro wrestling, so you're not going to do nothing like that, right? All right, so next match, Trios Championship, the House of Black, Buddy Matthews, Malachi Black, Brody King versus Best Friends, Trent Beretta and Chuck Taylor, as well as Bandito. Bandito, poor guy. Look, as long as he gets him on TV, I'm okay. Bandito's tremendous. Big fan. Watched him in Ring of Honor. Saw him live in GCW. Nice guy. Met him. This sucks, though. Him palling around with Orange Cassidy and the Best Friends, who is they're washed as an act. The Best Friends are the New Day of AEW, which means they're even worse. All right? They're completely and totally washed out. There's almost nothing behind the Best Friends anymore. The crowd barely gets behind them anymore. The crowd is behind Orange Cassidy. I don't think the crowd cares at all about Best Friends. All right? Bandito did the best he could. He looked really good in this match. I love the lighting. Now, when you compare what they did here to that absolute horseshit WWE continues to do with like The Fiend, Sin Cara, and Kane, where you can't see a motherfucking thing because it's red, they dimmed the lights on the crowd. Perfect. Lit the ring. Perfect. They had the little special effects go around the building. Perfect. It looked different. It felt different. It felt a little bit more intimate. You know, like you're watching a pit fight or something like that. I like that part of it. The presentation was on point. The reaction for House of Black was very good. People were really into them. People still like the House of Black, despite the fact we don't get to see them a lot. The match itself, though, I guess it was solid. I don't remember being in love with it. I do like Malachi Black. I do like Buddy Matthews, and I do like Bandito. There's so many elements of things that I don't like. But I did like the finish. I liked Brody King. He did like the fire driver for the pin. I did like that. So this match was fine. Okay, it was fine. Okay, so throughout the night they were doing these vignettes for the 4 pillars, you know, because none of them appeared in person for Detroit. I didn't really think about who wasn't there until just now, actually. Britt Baker didn't show up. Jamie Hayter didn't show up. No MJF, no Jungle Boy, no Sammy Guevara. No real build towards the pay-per-view. Outside of, I guess, the Jericho Adam Cole stuff, which is they lightly touched on. That was about it. I don't know. We'll talk about the cage match in a minute, but I don't know what that plays into when it comes to Double or Nothing. So until I figure that part out, I'm just going to say there was not much build for the Double or Nothing, especially during the main event, because you needed time to build up the main event. Instead, they just did vignettes, which is fine. That's cool, because this is just 1 week that these guys have not been featured. And plus, they wanted to give a lot of time to the cage match. Okay, fine. And of course, the tag team titles. I forgot about that. So during their various vignettes, each one of them talked about their strengths and stuff like that. MJF talked about how he was always the greatest of the Pillars. Said that the Pillars were like, they came on the scene like the Beatles. And I was like, I think we remember the Beatles a little bit differently. I remember people actually liked the Beatles. People don't really like people. The Beatles actually sold records, like the Beatles actually move units. I don't think anybody outside of maybe MJF himself has moved any units for AEW in terms of like tickets and shit, maybe Darby, because he did wrestle CM Punk for that time. And there was a time there where Darby was a bulletproof midget beating everybody that he came across. So maybe. But MJF talked about being a part of the greatest dog collar match, the greatest Iron Man match. He's going to be a part of the greatest Fatal 4-Way. I liked MJF's vignette. It was very good, typical of MJF. Darby Allin was talking about training. How he trains is by doing stunts, jumping off of his house and stuff like this, because it helps him break through his mental barriers. And that he wants to give back to AEW by becoming the world champion. That's his way of giving back to AEW. I say, you know what? I like this one too. This one was pretty good. Sammy Guevara. Samuel Samantha Guevara Jr. This fucking guy. The black sheep of the Four Pillars. The guy who's not supposed to be there, but he's undeniable. I was like, Jericho talking about, oh, he wasn't brought here to be my bump boy. He wasn't brought here to be my back carrier. He's brought here to be a star. I was like, okay, I don't know if I believe it, but okay. Didn't really care about the Sammy Guevara one. It was actually kind of lame. Jungle Boy. Jungle Boy, I wanted to wrestle since I was 4 years old, and I'm living my dream, and it's so nice. I'm like, look, this guy has the charisma of dishwater, right? I watched parts of that interview that Jim Cornette was talking about, and I said to myself, bro, this guy, he would probably sound bored on a roller coaster. You could probably get this guy in front of one of the hottest, like between him and Anna Jay, I'm like, fuck, which one of you makes the other one laugh? Like which one of you is the jokester? Which one of you is the prankster? Which one of you is the sense of humor? Like she has no personality. You have no personality. It's literally like a stock photo from one of those old magazines where you see pictures of a couples and they're just two good looking people smiling. Like you can't imagine them actually having any chemistry or getting along. That's kind of how I feel about Jungle Boy and Anna Jay. They're just two good looking people. I can't imagine them sitting around joking and laughing and, tossing popcorn on each other. Being charismatic people. I just can't imagine it. I just imagine their conversations is just sitting there deadpan, the both of them, just boring each other to death. I'm like, God damn, what the fuck? What is this? He sucks so bad, bro, that, look, the only thing he got going for him is that he's a handsome kid. That's about it. And his daddy was rich. I don't know why they don't play up that his daddy was rich and therefore he should, play up that he was rich growing up and all this kind of stuff. But they keep playing into that. I worked hard. I'm living my dream. Like he has a very unique background. He's the son of a movie star, like there's so many different ways you can go with that. I don't know why they just don't do that. Why are we insisting that he's fucking Tarzan boy? Once we know that his daddy is Luke Perry, the rest of this shit, throw it in the bin. Nobody else in wrestling is the son of a movie star, with the exception of Ava Raine in NXT. And she's doing her thing specifically because of who her father is. She's trying to go in a different direction. Why Jack Perry won't lean into the my daddy was a movie star, sort of mentality. Maybe because he doesn't have the charisma to do so, but he doesn't have the charisma to be fucking Tarzan either. This kid fucking sucks. This kid blows. All right? This kid blows chunks. He's bad at his job. Good athlete. But fuck, he ain't got much else going for him. He's like, he's terrible. Like fucking, ooh, shit. If it wasn't for Sammy Guevara, he'd be the worst of the pillars. I'm telling you, he sucks. Okay, now let us talk about the steel cage match. Mox Lesnar versus Kenny Omega. Now, I love this match. This was the best cage match I've ever seen live. It was also the only cage match I've ever seen live, but it was the best one. I think because of the history between these two characters, it makes a lot of sense for it to be violent. And this is pretty tame compared to the stuff they've done before. The glass, the barbed wire chair, pretty tame, in comparison to what they've done before. And I thoroughly enjoy it, like legitimately, not even trying to be funny. That said, Moxley not being able to untie that top turnbuckle, I heard people laughing at how long it was taking for him to untie that turnbuckle. Everybody, there was even a chant, "You can't do it, you can't do it." It took so long, Kenny Omega had to stop selling, get up and go over there just so Moxley can hit him again. Just so he won't look completely shit trying to get this thing to work. Eventually, Moxley did take the turnbuckle off, and it ended up being a very good weapon. I liked the spot where he put the hook in the mouth and stretched. It reminded me a lot of what Randy Orton did to Jeff Hardy's ear, when he, put his fingers in Jeff Hardy's ear and was pulling it. Like, that was sweet. I liked that. So I liked when the Moxley did it with Kenny Omega. That was great. I would have liked for it to like a little bit of blood or something like right there at his lip to show you that the thing is sharp, So maybe they could have like skipped and nicked the lip a little bit. At least put some cuts around it and make it like it really hurt or whatever. The barbed wire did a lot of damage to Moxley's back, especially on the double foot stomp. This match was so much better in the building than it was on TV. This match was something else in the building, especially the knee strike through the cage door. Through the door that knocked everything down. Tremendous. The energy at that point was very high. I was like, oh, this is fantastic. My problem with that part was they didn't really sell it. He went through the cage and he was up like a minute later. He was up before Omega was up. He being Moxley, pronouns, pal. He was up before Omega was up. I think at some point maybe he hurt his knee. I think a lot of us thought that Kenny Omega's knee might have gotten injured at that point, but it wasn't that much match left anyway. While Moxley was outside the ring, he went under the ring, he grabbed the screwdriver because that's his thing. He's going to stab Kenny Omega with the screwdriver. Don Callis gets in the ring, snatches it. Don Callis is wearing a smoking jacket. He looks like an old porn star, except for, actually he looks like a villain from Vice City. That's what he looks like, which, I guess fits because of what he did. So Omega does the one-winged angel to Jon Moxley. I think it was on the glass, actually. 1, 2, Don Callis stabs Omega in the head with the screwdriver. Bro, in the moment, in the building, that was tremendous. People who were sitting down, myself included, stood up. Because I was like, holy fucking shit. Holy shit. I didn't see it coming. Like, I legit didn't see it coming. There's a lot of AEW faithfuls out there who are talking about, oh man, they were teasing this for weeks now. I was like, bro, I legitimately was not paying attention. I'm just going to keep it real with you. I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't. Now, as certain people started putting it together online in order to make it make sense, because there was a lot of people who were saying like, oh, this is a swerve. It doesn't make any sense. Sometimes you can do things out of the blue like this and it still have impact to it. So even if you're somebody like me that wasn't paying attention, you can still enjoy this moment. because you're looking at it and you're saying to yourself, I wonder why. You know, that's the thing. Like when Paul Bearer turned on The Undertaker, he didn't really do a good job of like sprinkling breadcrumbs throughout the story so that you can get it. But they most certainly, when Paul Bearer turned heel, you felt that shit. Okay. Now I'm not saying this was on the same level. It's not, because they weren't together as long. But actually, they kind of were. They were together from 2020 to 2023, so about 3 years. Undertaker and Paul Bearer were together for much longer. So, but for the modern fans, it's not that often that you see a heel manager who didn't work as a babyface, by the way. Don Callis does not work as a babyface. He sucks as a babyface. Very, very good heel, though. So having this turn, it meant something. Now, everybody, of course, is trying to make it make sense. And they're like, oh, he bled with Moxley, and Moxley says that he doesn't partner with anybody who doesn't bleed with him. At the same time, though, Danielson is on commentary talking about he didn't know anything about this. Now, he could just be lying, which is, well within Danielson's character, but why does he need to lie? Why should he? It's already happened. Moxley already won the match. Why does he need to lie? But my favorite is, my new reaction is Brian Danielson, when he sees the turn happening, how he just breaks out this gigantic smile, I love that. It was so good. Danielson's laughing. He's having a blast. People in the building, they weren't ready to turn the chairs over or anything like that. They weren't furious, but they hated Don Callis in that moment. Callis looked like he's going to stab Omega again, but instead he kisses him on the forehead or something like that, and he leaves Kenny Omega in the lurch. Okay. Now, that ending scene, phenomenal. I liked it. Problem, because I got to criticize everything. The Young Bucks were out there earlier. All right. They were out there earlier beating up on Wheeler Yuta and Claudio. Okay. Didn't like that part either, because when you had Wheeler Yuta and Claudio, while they were, and maybe you guys wouldn't have known this because you weren't in the building, but Kenny Omega and Moxley were just kind of pacing around outside. They weren't fighting or anything. They were just kind of sitting in their corners. Like, you see how like, when they do like the blood and gut stuff, like it's not my spot. So I don't want to take away from what you're doing. So I'm going to go lay down somewhere and then you can go jump off this thing or whatever. They're doing the same thing here, where Moxley just found him a little corner just to walk around in. And I think maybe Kenny Omega was laying down. And then as soon as the Young Bucks get done doing what they're doing, they went back to their fighting each other. I didn't like that. I kind of felt that, it was a takeaway. I think that if they did the spot with the Young Bucks and all of those guys after the cage got busted open, and then you see Claudio and all of them rush the ring because Moxley's in trouble, and now the cage door is open. So now Claudio and Yuta rush the ring. And then, they're out there, they're about to do some damage to Kenny Omega, but the Young Bucks take them out. And the Young Bucks and all of those guys, they fight off, as Cornette hates that. But it will perfectly explain why Don Callis was the only one there and why the Young Bucks didn't come out to help him. Like, the first time Don Callis stabbed Kenny Omega in the head, the Young Bucks should have been down there. All right, they should have came right to the ring. Like, oh, hell no. It shouldn't have been an opportunity for him to try to stab Omega again, So that's the only critique that I have, is just place the Young Bucks run in at the point of the cage break-in, because then you can perfectly explain why Yuta and Claudio and all those guys will run to the ring, because Moxley's in trouble and now the cage is open, they can get in. Now you have the Young Bucks follow them to the ring and they all collectively fuck off. You can explain that the Young Bucks weren't there because they're still fighting with Claudio and Yuta and all of them. They jumped into some kind of big human slush over here in this area. Therefore, nobody else is there except Danielson, who's on commentary, and Callis. It would have explained it a lot better. Great moment overall, though. Cage match was fun in the building. It was fun on TV too, but it was really something in the building. They let the segment breathe. Omega laid in the ring, bleeding and looking pathetic, which is, was really good for him. Danielson called Moxley the king of violence, which, probably pissed off some people who who are like, big fans of ECW and stuff like this, but who cares? It was a fun match. It was a one match show, essentially. That one match was pretty damn good though. So I don't watch Rampage. I typically don't get bothered with Rampage. But for some reason, the show wasn't over and Big Surt's wasn't completely sober yet. So we decided to at least stay until he sobered up a little bit more, rather, let's say. So we watched a little bit of Rampage. And I'm telling you, I don't know what the fuck. I hate Rampage. I really do. I hate that show with the heat of 1,000 summers. I'm telling you, it's so bad. So the first match on Rampage was the Butcher, the Blade, Kip Sabian, and versus the Acclaimed and Billy Gunn. So everything about this is a mess. All right. For starters, Kip Sabian. Why does he exist? Why is he still a thing? This guy has a pink mohawk, and I wanted to kick him in his ball sack. Why does he look like this? Why does he act like this? Why is he still here? Who is still paying Kip Sabian? This is one of those times where the conspiracy theory can be completely reversed. I think that Tony Khan is being paid by Kip Sabian to continue to be worked there. All right? Unless he's pulling a George Costanza, where he got fired and he just shows up anyway, like it didn't happen. Somebody got to explain to me why this snowball continues to show up. All right? Now, Butcher and Blade, of course, was like extras from an old 80s action movie. Like, dudes Schwarzenegger with a shot in the alley or something like that. These fucking guys suck. Your boy Big Search, though, really offended by the scissor me daddy ass thing. For starters, he was calling them daddy. He didn't like that idea. He legitimately thought that these guys were Billy Gunn's sons, because he knew Billy Gunn's sons worked there, and they were not Billy Gunn's sons. It was... I got to tell you, I took great joy in telling him that they weren't his sons. He was very disappointed when he found out they weren't. So why are they calling them daddy? Like, well, I can give you two reasons. Anyway, the scissoring thing, he didn't get it. I just like, okay, the kids like it, whatever. Some drunk guy was standing on his chair yelling, "Scissor me daddy ass!" And I was like, oh God, please relax. This is Rampage. Relax. Okay. Max Caster's rap. I heard the Vince McMahon punchline. I couldn't hear much anything else. The worst mustache since Vince McMahon. I do hate Vince's mustache. I do hate it. I'm not even going to nitpick that one. I hate Vince McMahon's mustache. It's stupid. The real Vince McMahon wouldn't have sold WWE, and the real Vince McMahon doesn't have a mustache. So whoever this imposter is that has stolen the corpse of Vince McMahon and transmuted it into some kind of weird Mexican gang lord, it needs to stop. You need to find out where the real Vince is. Anyway, I didn't care about this match. I didn't really watch it. I was on my phone at this point in time. I was checking the time at this point. I'm like, oh brother. So, Tony Storm was next. Tony Storm defeats Allison Kay. Allison Kay was from the city. She got a decent reaction because they said she's from Detroit, Michigan. Everybody was like, yay! Most of these people did not remember who she was. It wasn't until I told Big Search who she was that he remembered that she was even in TNA. And to be quite honest, he had to remind him what TNA was. In any event, the match was a match. I didn't pay it much attention. The Outcasts, they did some kicks to Allison Kay. I swear to God, they couldn't scramble an egg with those kicks. They looked awful. They looked truly, truly bad. And I was like, oh boy. You need to sober up soon. Now, I forgot about this earlier because it wasn't important. But Orange Cassidy was jumped by some guy. I had no idea who he was. Nobody knew who he was because he got no reaction in the building. I was like, okay, I don't know who this guy is. So then when his theme song played for Rampage and he came out, somebody says, oh, it's Kyle Fletcher. I was like, what, this NXT ass name. Y'all make fun of people on NXT for having stupid names. This fucking guy's name is Kyle Fletcher. You make fun of guys at NXT for these random name generated names, and you let this guy running around here named Kyle Fletcher. It's already bad enough you got a guy named Dax Harwood. Kyle Fletcher and Dax Harwood. I guess all the wrestlers from the 50s took all the good names. All the Ox Bakers. The Bam Bam Bigelows from the 80s and shit. Now we're just stuck with Kyle Fletcher and Tank Ledger. That sucks. These names suck. Aussie Open fucking sucks. Why is this guy a singles wrestler? Isn't he a tag team guy? Thankfully, he was, your boy Big Certs was actually quite sober at this point, and therefore was able to drive home safely. So, we got the hell out of there shortly after, Kyle Fletcher versus, Action Andretti got started. I couldn't take no more. My knees were like really jammed up against the barricade on the mezzanine. I was very uncomfortable. I had to stretch my legs, which was great. So we decided to stop by the merchandise table before we left, and it was quite sad, if we're being honest. It was like those people were being held there against their will. It's like somebody was behind them with a pistol, like, you're going to continue selling t-shirts until the last bell rings. Because we left at like a good 10:20, 10:30. We got out of that building, and poor auntie was still sitting in her chair, checking her phone, trying to sell t-shirts to nerds. I didn't see anything cool, but I'm gonna give them credit because it was, again, 10:30. The show started at 7. Maybe they sold all their cool stuff, and all they have left is like FTR t-shirts and shit like that. But there wasn't much left at the merchandise table, so I took my leave. So all in all, it was a fine night. It was basically a 2-match show. I really enjoyed Claudio and Phoenix. Getting to see Phoenix live, like, I'm telling you, watching luchadors live is much better than watching luchadors on TV. I saw Commander in person at GCW at Harpo's. He was tremendous. It's more impressive to see it in person than it is to see it on TV. Seeing it on TV, there's still an element of your brain that thinks that it's a trick, that there's some kind of string or camera cuts or something like that. When you see it in person, it's so much more impressive. So Phoenix was super impressive in person. Even though, I could see through his offense, but that's been the thing with Phoenix for 3 years. You can see through his punches, and his kicks don't always make connects. And of course, you have to wait forever for him to do a spot. But ultimately, he looked really good. Same thing with Bandito. I saw Bandito live too. Same thing. Very impressive. Kenny Omega, he was actually a bit better live too. Moxley, about the same. I know a lot of people hate the new Moxley style of wrestling. I don't see why. He takes off after a lot of the stuff that you guys really liked, like the Attitude Era and ECW and stuff like that. He just brings that Terry Funk fighting stuff into the modern day. And I know that makes a lot of people cringe because they're like, don't compare him to Terry Funk. Terry Funk could do more than that. I'm like, yeah, but how many of you people actually remember like a Terry Funk match from the 70s? Most of you guys don't. You think about Terry Funk in ECW. Or when he's in WWE and he got put into a garbage can and pushed off that thing. That's when most people in my age group think of Terry Funk. Some of them think of Terry Funk from WCW, his match with Ric Flair, which was still like a garbage match. He was like, I quit or whatever. But, I'm not saying that Moxley is like the modern day Terry Funk. I'm just saying that style is similar. I've always been kind of on the fence with Moxley. I think this match was in his element, and I think he has really good chemistry with Kenny Omega, and they don't have bad matches against each other, so that was pretty good. Everything in the middle, though, mid, as usual, when it comes to AEW. So many people that I was actually interested in seeing, like Wardlow, didn't get to see him. Hobbs was there, but he was stuck with QT Marshall, and by that point, I was preoccupied with a pretzel and trying not to get high blood pressure. So that was That was his own kettle of fish. So this video is finally made. Thank everybody for waiting. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.
MagMongoSlade. Best house I ever drew, Daddy.